Here in Hawaii, there are about 130 suicides a year.
That's about one every 3 days, a shocking statistic and a difficult subject to talk about.
But it is the premise behind National Suicide Prevention Week. KITV4's Jill Kuramoto joins us now with more. Jill?
Well, if a suicide every 3 days isn't startling enough, how about this statistic? For every suicide fatality, there are about 7 attempted suicides across the state. Mental health advocates are hoping to increase the awareness about this prevalent problem in Hawaii because they say education is the best form of prevention.
According to the 2009 Youth Risk Behavior Survey data, Hawaii's high school students had the highest self-reported prevalence of considering suicide and attempting suicide in the nation.
It's something that's been consistent going back at least 10 years and is in some ways worsening over time.
Dan Galanis is an epidemiologist with the Department of Health and collects the data on suicide in Hawaii and says most people don't realize the scope of the problem here.
It's usually media policy not to report individual incidents, but when you look at things in the aggregate, it's really a major cause of mortality and morbidity in the state in terms of trauma.
In terms of fatality rates, elderly residents, those 85 and older, and those in the 40 to 54-year-old range were the highest. Psychiatrist Barry Carlton says high rates of depression, anxiety, unemployment, and alcohol and substance abuse are just some of the factors behind Hawaii's high suicide rates.
So those factors are additive, and so when you put them into families, then you are much more likely to have an increase in suicide and a much higher suicide rate.
Dr. Carlton says a common misconception is that to ask about suicide is to suggest it.
It's just the opposite. If someone is thinking about suicide and you don't ask, they will believe in an odd sort of way that you don't care and therefore they should go and kill themselves. Whereas if you ask and get them talking about it, you are far more likely to prevent the suicide.
And overcoming the stigma of shame related to suicide is a goal behind this annual week that brings attention to this most preventable death.
Now, there are several events, including a workshop being held this week to spread awareness of suicide prevention leading up to National Suicide Prevention Day, which is on Friday. And there are a number of resources available in Hawaii for those who feel like they can't go on and for those who are left behind after suicide. A link is on our website, KITV.com. Back to you.
Important to get people talking about it. All right, thanks, Jill.